Askreddit, people with expired non-disclosure agreements, what's the juicy info you can now tell us? As an investor, I was pitched a 10% stake in a company that owned the trademark iWatch, and their whole value weighed on Apple buying the rights from them. I declined. About a year later, Apple revealed the Apple Watch, and I sighed with relief. They probably already use the term iWatch for behind-the-scenes spying. My mom had an NDA while sitting on a grand jury for over a year. I prodded her all the time on the case and what she was doing for over a year of her life. She refused to tell me, only saying that, "You have to be very careful about what's said on the phone, you never know who's listening. But you'll know what I was doing when the story breaks." Okay, so a few months later I walk into work and see on the TV that our governor was indicted for corruption, including selling Obama's vacant Senate seat when he became pres in '08. Rod Blagojevich then paraded all over TV, including on The Apprentice, to tout his innocence and beg PPL to listen to the tapes that exonerated him. Yeah, okay dude. I have different information. You have to be very careful about what's said on the phone, you never know who's listening. Not listening, but recording just in case. I worked for an aviation company that, among other things, did charter flights. I had an NDA that I would not reveal who was traveling with us and where they were going. This was for client privacy, as some people are wealthy, famous enough that they're targets for paparazzi, or even espionage, kidnapping, extortion etc. So now that it's expired, I can tell you that a minor country music star flew with us when his regular jet broke down, that the CEO of the local food processing plant goes to his Florida house about twice a month, and that's about it. Nothing exciting. Edit. I actually do not remember the name of the country music star, this was 20 years ago and I don't follow country music. Like I said, my NDA was in place in case we had anyone big come through, but in the time I worked there we never really did. I'm upvoting this simply because most NDAs are not some super hush-hush thing. Most of them are pretty boring. I worked with Pinewood Studios on the engineering for the effects of the fairy in Spider-Man Homecoming to split in half and I wasn't allowed to spoil that. Used to walk our dog around Black Park, saw the biggest Chinese dragon model between the trees at Pinewood. Huge it was. Must have cost a fortune. And then 2 years later when we saw James Bond, first forget which one, saw said dragon. Was in shot for about 3 seconds and entirely inconsequential to the story. And now I understand why films cost hundreds of millions to make. Outback Steakhouse's recipe for macaroni and cheese, 4 ounces of heavy whipping cream, 4 ounces of Velveeta cheese, 9 ounces of al dente penne pasta, throw it in a sauté pan and melt the cheese. Bam! Outback mac and cheese smiley face. Edit. Just for clarification, this is the old recipe. I left the company in 2003. The newer recipe has cavatappi pasta and spices and crispy topping. Yo, that's pretty interesting, thanks for the info. Still another 65 years before I can reveal the outdated 1980s designs for my nuclear submarine. All the people at the retirement home are going to lose their minds. Remind me in 65 years. Edit. Spelling due to autocorrect. The state of Oklahoma once busted a counterfeit check ring because the individuals misspelled Oklahoma on the front of some checks. They were damn near perfect copies with valid account, check and amount numbers and were caught when an employee who ran a sorter machine noticed a rejected check with the spelling Oklahoma. I was that employee and had to testify in court regarding finding the checks. I think I'm still not supposed to talk about certain details, even though it was a long time ago. Just, come on, how could you not quadruple check something simple like that when committing fraud? I served on a board that had kidnap ransom insurance for all the board members. A condition of the insurance was that we could tell no one that we had kidnap ransom insurance. If you have a Comcast voice remote and you say, "Make Robert happy," it will turn the TV to Doctor Who. There used to be a lot of hidden voice commands in the system. We had to take a lot of them out over time, but that one is still in there. Edit. A couple people have asked me who Robert is. He is one of the software engineers working on the voice remote system. As a proof of concept early on he put that in, and just never removed it. Edit 2. Some people are asking for another one. If you say, "Big Boss," it'll make your TV go to an empty page left over for the Minions movie and make your TV play a Minion noise. It seems they removed a lot of them, but that one is still there too. Just tested this, 100% true. Those things expire? My NDA says it only expire when the information becomes public. It's simple, release the information publicly on Reddit, so the NDA expires. Pasado's Safe Haven oversold their memorial dog cottages. So when a donor, they cost $10,000, came to visit their dog's memorial cottage that they donated $10,000 for, Pasado's would have to swap out the memorial plaque. Super shitty. Edited for clarification, this isn't a pet cemetery. With a $10,000 donation, people got to sponsor a rescue dog by paying for a cabin for them to live in. That $10,000 donation came with a "This cabin was provided by a donation in the memory of dog name here" type plaque. They sold more $10,000 donations than they had cabins. Imagine a cemetery full of mausoleums, where you use a keycard to enter and the plaques are all nicely mounted panel TVs. Showing heartwarming videos of the deceased. Except that the keycard is tied to the video shown, so you could have limitless people interred in one mausoleum, and the video just switches based on whoever swipes in. Jagex upper management has a serious cocaine problem. They completely killed Ace of Spades over dope money. They canned a community-beloved team, and attempted to insert public relations agents into the community. They finally got Ben to move to London, where they dusted him with blow until he was finally hooked to the point of signing over everything, and selling out his friends. TLDR, never do business with British coke whores. RuneScape Jagex? That they were coming out with a Microsoft Watch to rival the Apple Watch, this was 4 years ago if not longer, you can bet it flopped. Introducing the Microsoft Zune Watch. I was once on the camera crew of Pimp My Ride and most of the show is fake. The guys knew ahead of time that we were arriving, the car had to be fully paid off, and most of the work done has to be paid for in almost full. My cousin sent in a letter trying to get his car on the show. They told him his car wasn't ghetto enough. Their words. It's not much, but I was part of developing AirDrop for Mac OS X Lion 10.7 and was doing this on a 2008 Mac Pro. In the end, we were told it's not to be made compatible with 2008s and require a 2009. That made no sense because I was successfully testing it on the 2008 just fine. It was a planned obsolescence, a ploy to force users to buy a new Mac. Upset, I secretly released a patch on MediaFire for owners of a 2008 to get AirDrop. It didn't require much as I made the lockout as cheaply as possible. I also did development of USB 3.0 support and also did this on my 2008 Mac Pro. I should mention that this Mac Pro is a prototype with a unique firmware that has an inside BIOS setup with all options available for debugging, of which Apple never asked back, and I still have today in my office as my daily driver. It has no serial number and refers to itself as a prototype in any software trying to get a board revision. It also doesn't run retail Mac OS, hence I said BIOS earlier. It doesn't have EFI, so it runs Windows 10 today with a GTX 1050Ti installed, and still has the USB 3.0 card I had during development. Before anyone asks, no, I didn't steal it. I asked my supervisor if they wanted it back, and he told me to keep it, they had no use for it. Thanks for the silver, kind stranger. Here's a video of the machine today for those curious. Apologies for my sleepiness in my voice, fairly tired today for some reason. At Veriform, it's a factory that makes auto parts for Chrysler, Jeep. They allow their employees to breathe in toxic welding fumes, and only when the government came around for testing did they add more air flow, then took them away after. Never gave the proper PPE for the work, always had ripped gloves and working with razor-sharp steel pieces. The temps outnumbered the full-timers 4-to-1. The temp agency does even hire people who speak English. He literally just hold up money and says want. It's a mega shitshow there. Edit, lots of people are asking me to report it. I can assure you it's already been done. Friends I still have there are saying air quality tests are being routinely done, but usually with the bay doors open for a few hours and fans from non-welding lines to help airflow then return to their rightful line. I appreciate the concern and advice from everyone. Thanks again and good luck to everyone that's in this situation. East way to solve this. Send an anonymous complaint to OSHA. They will do a surprise inspection. Fines will be handed out. Get these assholes on someone's radar. Please. Deleted. NDAs don't cover illegal activity. I can tell you that if you go back and watch the episode of Top Chef Masters in a boxing ring in Vegas, you just might be able to see me nodding off in the hilariously small studio audience. Edit, me coming back to see my inbox. Nodding off? Is it boring? I still don't wanna say who, but a major jewelry store took my rings for resizing and promptly lost them, and by lost they meant an entire truck of jewelry was stolen. They kindly offered to replace my price list to me, rings, with equal value, rings. Ha ha, no, they replaced them with rings twice what the others were worth. I'd take back the originals in a heartbeat, sad face, but they replacements are nice. My wife and I lost our wedding rings in completely different circumstances. Hers was a little loose and we have no idea where it ended up when it slipped off. Mine slipped off in a doctor's office after I washed my hands. I didn't notice until I was walking out that it was gone. I searched every inch of that office and the trash can. I threw the paper towels I dried my hands with. Someone stole my ring and it pisses me off to this day. My wife keeps saying we should get new rings, but they would just be some empty facsimile. I want our original rings back, so I feel your pain. Worth more in love and memories than money. Edit. It's not possible it was in the drain. It had 3 mm size holes and it was physically impossible for my ring to go down the drain. Also, I know my wife and her wants. The internet can now stop messaging me about someone they don't know. Not exactly an NDA, but I work in my school's biology department and somewhere in the basement of the science center we have a complete set of fetuses in various stages of development. We have had them since about the 60s. I saw them and one literally looks like it's seconds away from opening their eyes. We keep it pretty hush-hush because a lot of the school's funding comes from more conservative and pro-life sources that would not be very happy to see we have those. Oh, my biology department has a few of those as well. We hope they were ethically sourced, but the anatomy market before the 70s was a very illegal thing. Grandpa worked with satellites in the 50s, 60s for the Air Force. Like, if you tell anyone anything about these, we'll execute you for treason, stuff. He walked into a comic book store in the 90s and found trading cards with all the info he was sworn to guard decades earlier. I am confused. Did the info become public? All my NDAs come from working in film and video production, so there really isn't too much juicy shit, but the one thing that has always stuck with me is Jessica Chastain gets whatever the frack she wants whenever the frack she wants it. To add, totally forgot, Drake is terrified of owls. By the sounds of things, you could go on IMDb and fill it with info that people didn't know they needed, like, as a random thought, Jennifer Aniston jumps every time she farts. I worked at a printing company outside DC in the late 90s, early 2000s. We did work for the government from time to time. We printed materials for the investigation into the Branch Davidian cult in Waco, TX. There was tons of aerial photos of the compound, and for some reasons David Koresh owned many Camaros. They were mostly old beat-up ones, but there were a few dozen on the compound. So you're telling me you have juicy info on a cult, but you're only mentioning some old cars that were there. I once dog sat Beyoncé's dog. It arrived in a Louis Vuitton dog carrier and was kind of an asshole. And she made you sign an NDA? Some country in Far East is working on some weapons that can be shot from space. Oh boy. That the charter school I taught for was in reality a Scientologist school. We had to do training in Scientology after school for 2 hours a day. We had to sign a NDA to get our $1,000 bonus for doing the non-elective training. Those parents had no idea the school was Scientology. We did not teach them how to be Scientologists, but we certainly used the terminology and OLL Ron's ideas. This was about 25 years ago, before we knew much about Scientology. I didn't buy in and I wasn't invited back the following year. The school dissolved about 4 years later. I applied for a job and they sent me that L. Ron Hubbard Scientology personality test before even offering an interview. Couldn't tell if it was a joke, but I filled it out anyway and I was never called for an interview. The job was for making clay tiles at a small studio. They post job openings pretty frequently though. One of the more bizarre experiences I've had. I had to sign a non-compete and NDA when I worked at a successful local bakery. We didn't sell anything super extravagant, kinda your normal stuff like cookies, brownies, cake, cupcakes, croissants. The most complicated thing we did was candy bars, but even they weren't patisserie level. The NDA was just to ensure that we didn't share, take her recipes and start our own business, which is totally reasonable. We could tell people the ingredients because of allergies and whatnot, but not specific brands or recipes. People would come in and make conversation by asking what our secret was to such amazing treats, just being complimentary and not really expecting me to spell out the recipes. I'd always playfully say, "Oh, well, I can't tell you that." Or to the more chill, fun customers I'd say, "I'd tell you, but then I'd have to kill you." Some people really wanted to know though, and I'd have to tell them I actually legally can't talk about it. It's interesting how when some people realize they're not allowed to know, they get ravenous about getting the information. I had someone trying to sneak in our kitchen storeroom to try and deduce something. The big secret? Good quality ingredients and basic baking technique. Literally that's it. People could easily find recipes online of close approximations of anything she made and recreate them to a comparable level if they bought good ingredients and learned pretty basic baking skills. Had to sign an NDA in order to reforest an artillery range that was last active in the 1920s, just in case we found some high-tech military secrets from 90 years ago. I wonder what was considered high-tech by the military all those years ago. Had to sign a NDA before hiring at my current job. And although I can't tell you the secrets, I can tell you that literally nobody would care to hear them anyways. Seriously. My NDA covers the fact that I signed an NDA. You got it. A certain lieutenant governor was woken up at 2 a.m. because we discovered the governor had signed the wrong bill into law. Can a bill be unsigned? I work on a popular show for Netflix that only finishes their episodes like 5 days before they're released. People seem to think their batch completed and they have the entire show ready to go. Yeah, it sucks, but unfortunately that's actually quite common in Korea. Writers are writing the script based on audience reactions literally the day before and sometimes modify the plot to fit what's more popular. You can forget about normal work-life balance. It's common to work 48+ hours straight just to accommodate this ridiculous way of doing things. I applied for a job at a call center not knowing what they specifically did, only knowing that I could do it. Turned out to be a telemarketing firm full of transitioning felons that were drooling on the headsets because management didn't care how high you were as long as your metrics had good sales per hour. City is ripping off the elderly, specifically, by pushing them into adding identity theft insurance for $14.95 a month. They offer it through store credit cards, like Sears or Shell branded ones, that they issue. You get help, access to credit counselors, after your identity gets stolen and a free credit report every year, a thing that's free anyway plus a thing I'm pretty sure you already have in the fine print of the card because it's Visa and they have insurance, inadequately offered via third party for $14.95 a month. The age field was 3 digits long. It was gross that they were selling information about your credit card account as marketing leads companies that hire drug addict jailbirds who are given a commission to sell you insurance you already have just in case your identity gets stolen. I cannot do this type of call center work anymore. I refuse. I'll live in the poorhouse before I rip off the elderly again. I did the same kind of shit but for Dell accounts back in the day. Forgive me, baby Jesus. Unrelated, but my uncle has a non-compete that lasts 2 years past his death. It is 2 years past whenever he dies. His date of passing is not a known piece of data or plan. He can disclose post-mortem by leaving a letter in the lawyer's safe like on Back to the Future. I catered a expensive wedding and Drake performed at the after party. That's right, Drake took a wedding gig. A lot of people don't realize that major musical artists do private gigs all the time, as long as the folks hiring them can pay their rate, which is usually the same or very close as they would get for playing an arena, festival, etc. A client invented a watch with 2 faces so you could set it to time zones. Nice for international travelers who couldn't do simple math. My boss broke the NDA and the company was almost sued. He had to pay them something, but I don't know what. Idiot told the client that he shared the idea with a sales rep from a watch company to see if it was a good idea. The rep said yes. Don't worry, the rep promised to not tell anyone else. Edit, it looked something like this. How does a person that clueless become a boss? Someone I know signed a NDA with a fruit company because her phone caught fire during the night while charging with official hardware. She got paid in the six figures to not talk about it after reporting the issue and got to discuss it with high-ranking officer of said company. Fruit company because her phone caught fire. Yeah, those evil blackberries. P. My old landlord building company paid all expenses for me to break my lease, move out and get all my possessions heat treated after I came back from study abroad to bedbug infestation. They didn't want other residents to know if they threatened to sue they could get their stuff treated. You had a better experience bedbugs than 99% of people. Please subscribe. Multiple videos uploaded daily.